Okay, this is A Light at the Next from Atrib. I'm Eley Williams.
Hello, my name's Scott Manley Hadley. This is Triumph of the Now TV, TOTN TV. This episode is a special where I hear a reading from and then interview Eley Williams, the author of Atrib, the highly acclaimed book of short stories. She's also got a book of poetry forthcoming called Frict, and we also discuss her prose poetry magazine, journal, online website. That's it, enjoy.
A Light at the Next. When the carriage doors do their thing, it being after hours when my thinking is unsavoury and also far from sweet, knowing that we are at the stop nearest my house, and I'm going to have to summon the courage to ask you to come back. The whole cadence of my composed speech set to work in time with the slowing of the tube train, the slowing with a whinge of not hinges, but a kind of mechanical sighing. And when the doors, please mind, when the doors are opening and you are standing closer to me than you ever have, and I have been counting and measuring, and the doors have opened, and a man pushes on to get inside the carriage before I've had time to step down. So without thinking, and certainly without hinges, I am holding up my hand and placing a finger in the middle of his forehead. He freezes. The carriage freezes, a carriage steamed up and bulbous with umbrellas and the slapping batskin wings of waterproof jackets. The man doesn't look in my eyes, because this is London, damn it, but he halts there, one shoe up on the train. I look like I am blessing him. I hope no one thinks I'm blessing him. I hope you don't think I do this regularly, you standing so irregularly close to me like this. And the angle of the man's nose is precisely 45 degrees. This was distracting. I wish someone had a protractor so I could show you how precisely at 45 degrees this man's nose was. But who carries protractors on the district line, and what kind of pervert even knew what the set square in the geometry school set was for, unless one is the daughter of a naval architect or wanting to prove the angle of a man's nose, inches, imperial inches, from one's own. And I wish, not for the first time, that London had bars, or at a push a wooden buffet carriage on the tube, because I would keep my finger there against his forehead, hold out my other hand, and perhaps you might slide a whiskey down across the bar to me, and I would drink it, and I would pull my hat down as your arm came across my shoulder to show you that we were a crack team at getting the tube to my stop, that we were as good as Bonnie and Clyding this evening. This thought breaks down when I remember I don't like whiskey, spelled with an E or without. This Bonnie and Clyde metaphor breaks down too when I remember that the real-life Clyde, in jail, in order to get out of breaking rocks, took a spade and cut off some of his own toes. I would not want you to have a toeless lover. I want you to have a lover who can stop this man in his suit and tie. I want you to have a lover who is not embarrassed to say the word lover in a carriage filled with tired final round West Londoners. And this man, this awful man in a tie that's red, and if I squint down at it, the tie past his set square 45-degree nose, the tie looks like a botched tracheotomy dribbling past his nose. That's not fair. It's a nice tie, and he just has someone to get to, and I just want to seem like a kind of person that can stand up for themselves on the tube, let alone keep standing when you really are standing so close to me. It used to have "Mind the Gap" written at this station in yellow on the platform edge, but now it says "Mind the Step." The difference is crucial. Even the platform is a coward and uses polite, shirking rhetoric and less capitalization. Now, even as my finger is still on his forehead, and the doors are shutting, and we will both miss my stop, and I might lose a finger, but Clyde of Bonnie and fame lost some toes, and I might be played by Warren Beatty someday, so I give this man's forehead a little jab, the smallest pressure. He has not met my eyes this whole time, like someone has thrown the book at him before, and I make a boiled sound, because I am the first to admit that my spirit animal is probably a buttered roll, and that I create characters and situations where I am brave for the same reasons that some people love the stuffing of caught birds. Pigeons get caught on the carriages sometimes. I've seen it with my oyster in my pocket, spring in my step-toes. I forget sometimes what preclude and nascent mean. It has been a long day for everybody, even for pigeons, and it is forgetfulness that makes me brave at the sound of this gamelan of joists and hot steamed grit zoom that is pulling into stations. I'm certainly braver than before, when the pre-U afternoon got jumbled with the U evening at rush hour, where throats squirmed with the old smoke and stream of tunnels, a world pinstriped by eyelashes, uproarious with the need for a Friday, downroarious with lost cards. There are earphones trailing from this man's neck, and they squeak with chords that have the same obtuse delicacy of a dove retching. The thought of you unscrews my head. And if you record the rip of glacier through ice and modulate its frequency, it sounds of whale song. And we often have cause to think of glaciers and their pace and place on the district line. We are still here, with my E.T. finger set against his forehead. He does not wear a wedding ring, and I construct a reality for him wherein he, after an argument with his wife, stamped out of the house and tried to remove the ring, could not, had to buy a cheap bottle of salad cream at the corner shop by his tube station to use as lubricant so that he might loosen it from his hand. And I had one drink this evening, so it's unlikely to be the stout that makes me brave or foolhardy, stout that tasted feminine of ashtrays, bran and old lipstick. You were so clever, I remember thinking, badly. You were so clever, and you know so much. And I often think the only way that I could protect you if you ever asked, because you know you would never need to be protected and would kick me for trying, you are certainly standing close enough, would be to snap your head off and roll it out of harm's way for the nation's sake. I forgot. I simply forgot the way that love becomes a whimsy in the full throttle of throats, the buzz of flightless eyelashes against pillowcases on a winter's evening, when pigeons grow full fat against the frost and the letter P in the word receipt begins ticking at the clock teeth, the watched rim of a clock when I wake up to find the time from being a cameo in my own dreams, where I occasionally look straight to camera and spoil the shot. I forgot about waking to dumb punk dawns, me, a hopeless sometimes sun type whose act is hardly ever there, delivering unheimlich manoeuvres like this finger on the centre of this man's forehead. Somewhere beyond us an escalator squeals, a pushchair squeals, the child in the pushchair squeals. I only did not squeal because you really are standing so very close. Look how far my arms can go around things, I want to say. I could hug a whole telephone box. And I've had too much, perhaps, of the good stuff, and Lord knows there's a lot of the world that we're missing as I do something important with this here man and this here tunnel. For example, we're missing an overly busy sky with a warp and a weft to it, like tweed. Starlings making a tweed of the sky. For example, we're missing a snail insisting that he's in the haulage business. We're missing drinking hot chocolate in the continental way, kissing in a gorse bush. We're missing chewing gum until my jaw is black and blue and the world is tired mint, district line coloured, but throwaway lines like this will be all right, because today my eyes are chintz. Today my eyes are tiger skin. Today my eyes are traitors. Today my eyes are Delftware. And he's met them, finally. Is beneath a verb. Perhaps I'm thinking of bequeath or breathe. Each of his eyelashes is a candle wick, and now I find that I cannot look at him full on in case I press my heart out through my teeth. And time passes, in and out of consciousness, and the man steps back, and the tube doors shut. And you really were standing so very close to me as the train moved itself beneath him. Yeah,
That's great.
It's very gratifying to know that it's being read, I suppose, first of all. People have been very generous with their reviews and their readings of them. I think short story collections aren't often reviewed, and because I think people are interested in what's happening with the use of language most, I think that's come out in a lot of the reviews. And I think a lot of reviews that I'm used to reading, it tends to be about the kind of content of the book and what themes come out and what characters do and situations and settings. So it's interesting to read it about kind of on a sentence by sentence level sometimes in some of the reviews. But no, it's great.
What do you feel it is about your writing that's exciting people? What is it? How is it? What is it you do with language that's exciting people?
People seem to have zoned in on the way that, and maybe it came across in the reading there, that sentences can kind of unspool a little, and language gets a little unhinged in every sense as characters or as a narrator's thoughts unspool and become, to mix metaphors, kind of clotted or become nebulous in some way. And I think people seem to be excited how that links to their idea of time and thought processes, and I was definitely trying to do that in some of the stories. So it's that seems to be picked up on, which is good.
Well, I mean, it feels feels like the way people think.
Mm.
I think, if that makes sense. You also got a book of poetry. Is that just come out or is it about to come out?
It's poised to come out. Most of the poetry seems to have a first-person lyrical eye in it, and I think all but one of the short stories is first-person as well. I mean, the poetry book it's called Frit, and it's about this idea of being unsettled and being frightened by events occurring around you. And I think a lot of the characters in the book and the narrators in the book are, if they're not frightened, they're on high alert often, and that comes with kind of noticing and the rest of it. But noticing the rest of it, that being the human condition. But no, I think they do share themes, I suppose. Yeah, I think if you like the short stories, you'll not hate the poetry entirely. Hopefully, put that on the blurb. You may not hate this. But,
what are people scared of?
In the poetry,
Yeah,
everything really. I guess scared of that question. Why can someone feel anxious about the fact that they're feeling anxious? That kind of closed loop, that circuitry that goes on. Current affairs, historical events, a little bit of everything really. And there's celebration of it as well. But I suppose finding the balance between being frightened of most things and being hopeful at the same time. That seems to crop up quite a lot as a theme.
So I was looking at your Jungftag, your prose poetry magazine.
Yeah.
How did you come to make that happen?
Just because I couldn't find online a prose poetry journal in the same way. Funny enough, that Jungftag is also named after one of these false words, and no one knows how to pronounce it or type it in to URL. So it was not particularly well chosen on my part as a title, but no, it was really to fill a gap in the market. And my sister, who is a scientist but also an artist, does the artwork for it. So
yeah, it looks great.
No,
Did you describe yourself as a website supervisor rather than editor? Why do you do that?
I think because I don't really have any formal training in poetry, and definitely not in prose poetry. I know what I like, and I like seeing the work come in and asking questions about it, but I don't often suggest edits. It's not that I accept everything that comes in, but it does feel more like a supervisor's role, and I guess that comes with the idea of kind of creating something just because it hasn't been there before. I don't really know how to run a journal, so it feels more like supervision than bringing out editions, I suppose.
Exciting. Why do you use Giant Rat of Sumatra as a name and
good
website?
Question. To begin with, it was because I'm a fan of Sherlock Holmes, and that's a reference to one of the cases that the detective talks about, but it's never actually written about by Dr. Watson as one of the canonical set texts. And it's this idea of a giant rat of Sumatra, that's such a kind of a tasty phrase. And there's this sense, I don't know, rats in literature, they're often the villains, they're often kind of scurrilous and surreptitious vermin, obviously, and there's something nice about that particular non-character's elusiveness, as well as the way that they have elucidated a lot of people trying to guess what it meant, what this character could be. So I thought it would be quite a nice kind of anonymous but memorable moniker. I do slightly regret it now because people have stopped me at things and been like, rat, and I'm like, what? And it takes a while to remember I chose that. That's my fault. But yeah, that's the reason for it.
Cool. Is it a real animal?
There are giant rats in Sumatra, pleasingly. They've never been, Sherlockian or Holmesian scholars have never been too sure whether he was talking about an actual rat or he was just making it up as he went along. But Yeah, Google giant rat Sumatra and you do see a couple. I think this one, I'm going to forget now what species it is. Something like a cloud rat, cloud bamboo rat, which again is a brilliant name. Start another blog with that.